Emotional pains out there as a signal from your brain. There is something that you need to do to elevate yourself mentally. Have you noticed sometimes how it feels like we are being controlled by our emotion? The moment where we need to stay productive and motivated, we feel pessimistic and underdetermined, and we feel like we don't have energy to do anything at all. The moment where we need to stay calm and patient, we become angry and impatient. And sometimes the more you try to see things in positive light, the more you are pushed towards negative emotion. These emotions comes out of nowhere. Such a small thing can trigger such a big reaction and feeling in us that we find ourselves constantly battling with our own mind and emotion. The thing is, the relationship you have with your emotion and yourself is just like the relationship you have with your loved ones. If there is an issue but you both keep arguing, fighting and neglecting each other, the deeper issue will never get resolved and eventually relationship will fade away. But the only difference is that emotion doesn't fade away. Instead, it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger until we can't just take it anymore. But you can tame this emotion before it gets to monstrous size by trying to understand them. Have you ever tried to actually sit down and understand what emotion really are? But if you click this video, that means you're on the way there, because in this video we're talking about what are emotion and how can we manage them, so that next time if big emotion attacks you, you sit down with them and work it out instead of labeling it as enemy and running away from it and fighting it. But before that, welcome to my channel or welcome back. This is Sabina and I'm really grateful that you're here. So to start with, what is emotion? Emotion is movement of energy. It is a physical sensation that determines the quality of your life. If you are experiencing negative emotion, you look at your life, environment and yourself with negative filter on. That's why no matter if your environment changes or not, your perception of world just seems to be negative. But similarly, if you are experiencing a positive emotion, no matter if your environment changes or not, things just seems to flow in positive manner, or it doesn't bother you as much. There are lots of things that triggers emotion in us, and emotions are unpredictable. And because emotions are unpredictable, we cannot be certain that we will be always positive. So rest assured and let go of need to stay always positive because you're aiming for impossible. If you were always happy, you wouldn't know what happiness really feels like without experiencing sadness, anger, and other low vibe emotion. Happiness would be your neutral state, meaning you still wouldn't be happy. The goal here is not to wipe out negative emotion completely out, but to understand them. Negative emotions are there for a reason. Like when something is wrong physically, we feel pain, and because of this pain, we realize there is something wrong and we take actions like going to doctor, take medicine, which is actually keeping us alive. And similarly, emotional pains are there as a signal from your brain. There is something that you need to do to elevate yourself mentally. Maybe you have neglected something. Maybe you need to take action towards something. Maybe you need a change. So now we have talked about what emotion is. Let's jump into the ways how can we manage them. Number 1, cut out your overthinking and acknowledge the real issue. 90% of our mental suffering and emotional pain comes from our overthinking and the way we intensify things. I recently got my wisdom tooth out and it was so bad. Even though the doctor said that it will heal very soon, I couldn't help but overthink because my cheeks were so swollen. I couldn't speak, I couldn't eat, and I felt like I was gonna be forever stuck in this situation. But at the end, everything healed so perfectly, and now I think about it, most of my energy just went to overthinking and panicking about something that was never gonna happen. When one bad thing happens, we think about other 100 things that could go wrong, and most of the time it doesn't even relate to actual issue and it is full of imagination. We intensify this one thing to the point that we feel like we cannot move past it, and on top of that we overthink, which stops us completely from actually looking at the core problem. Start focusing on actual issue and don't let yourself be overpowered by overthinking. Awareness that you're overthinking can help you shift your attention from imagined issue to actual issue, and that way if you can do anything about this issue, you can take action, and if you can't, you can let it go. Number 2, change your narrative and focus on what you want instead of what you don't. Since our mind sees negative outcomes and negative situation easily because of its protective mechanism, oftentimes we find ourselves getting so focused on what we don't want. And we live in this fear of not wanting this thing. Living in this state of fear brings so much negative emotion in us, and we end up being anxious, stressed, and even depressed. This emotional state not only brings emotional pain but also brings physical issue with it. Next time when you find yourself thinking that I hope my interview doesn't go bad. I hope my date doesn't go bad. I hope nothing bad will happen to me. Start revising the way you think in positive way and start saying, I hope my interview goes well. I hope my date goes well. I hope everything works out for me perfectly. This lets your brain anticipate the good thing that might happen instead of things that could go wrong. And you can show up for this thing in a better state than instead of fear. Also, when you have fearful outlook of your life, you will be fearful of anything. You will be fearful of change, to take a risk, and you create this victim mentality, and when opportunities comes by, you just let it slip right in front of your eyes. Stop doing this to yourself. We don't know if things are going to work out as we are expecting, but we also don't know if things are going to go bad as we are expecting. So why give ourselves this mental suffering way before things has gone wrong? When you're expecting bad things, you might as well get it because you're emitting that frequency towards universe and universe will comply. Number 3, release your emotion. Have you felt like people are doing shitty things to you? Small things are triggering you. You have huge urge to gossip and vent things out. Usually when we feel this way and blame others for making us feel a certain way, we're actually projecting our repressed emotion into their action. This one I'm going to read from a laptop because this is important and I wrote it down. So, when we have repressed emotion, our mind seeks to release that emotion subtly and subconsciously by blaming others. But because of our unhealthy ego, which doesn't want to acknowledge that there is something wrong going on with us, and because it wants to feel superior, we fail to see deeper issues and we end up blaming our emotion for superficial things. Sometimes subconsciously you might have held so much guilt and shame in the things that you've done that with the fear of losing this superior identity you have created, your brain might not even let it come into your consciousness. But the thing is, you are not your emotion, and these emotions are just the energy you are carrying. So you have to stop identifying with your emotion. When people say they're sad, they're not sad. They're feeling sad. Learn to separate yourself from your emotion. Educate your brain to be able to handle this emotion consciously and expose yourself to scary emotions. This is the way you let your brain know that you're capable of handling this. And that way, instead of dealing the situation with anxiety and stress, you can deal it with empowerment. Journaling is a great way to figure out what emotions are being repressed and where they are coming from. So, how do we release our emotion? Remember, emotion is energy that needs to move. So the only thing that you can do to release this emotion is give it attention. Without acknowledging something, you cannot let go of them. And same with emotion. This energy you feel needs to move. But when you suppress it, like by trying to be positive when you feel sad, or hold on to this emotion like by thinking about the things from past again and again, or neglect them by not acknowledging you're sad, they get stuck, and that is why you suffer. Start acknowledging your emotion and it will move past. Don't believe me just because I'm saying. Try it for yourself. Next time when you're feeling sad or anxious, say to yourself that I am sad, I am anxious, and see how much pressure disappears. But this is not possible all the time because sometimes our emotion gets triggered in public places like work. In those times, what I do is I tell my emotion that I'm going to give you attention once I get home with no distraction. That way, I'm not invalidating my emotion. I'm just scheduling to work on it later on my safe space. Number 4, be aware of the stories that you are telling to yourself. To be real, events that happens are just events. You give it a meaning, and depending on the meaning that you give to it, you release certain emotion. For example, some people might be happy with the rain, some people might distaste the rain, but rain itself has nothing to do with it. It's the meaning that you give to this rain brings out certain emotions in you. So start working this out for your advantage and guide your body and mind to see things in positive light. Breakup example would work so perfectly on this. So when you share your breakup story, do you victimize yourself or do you actually praise yourself for overcoming such a hard heartbreak? Do you constantly keep blaming your ex for how he made your life miserable, or do you actually see the good that came with the breakup? Do you fail to see how wonderful your life has been after that breakup, or are you stuck in victim story? Revise the story that you are telling to yourself. That way, when certain emotion comes up because of your ego, victim mentality, or low self-esteem, you can actually guide yourself to see things in different perspective. Put this in your affirmation. Bad things always end up happening for a good reason, even though at times it might not feel like it. Number 5, take into account of your external factors that contributes to your emotion. Number one, sleep. Proper sleep helps you regulate your emotion better because your brain uses the sleep to reset its brain function overnight and reduces cortisol, meaning that you will be able to adapt to stressor that comes in a day better. Have you ever noticed if you haven't had a proper sleep and you have to go to work next day, everything annoys you? It feels like everything is triggering emotion in you, and it feels like it's so hard for you to handle all this stress that's coming out throughout the day. Number two, food. Processed and fried food or sugary food and drink are proven to contribute to depression and anxiety. This food causes neuroinflammation, bringing barrier between brain and your body, which is big trigger for depression and obviously other mental stress. Number three, what kind of information you're consuming. This can be social media, your circle, TV shows, movies, music. Social media. Overuse of social media causes over-release of artificial dopamine, which pushes our natural dopamine below the baseline, causing it so hard to feel good without social media. That's why social media are highly addictive and is linked to emotional imbalances. Your circle. The circle you hang out with greatly impact your emotion because emotion is energy and energy is very influential. So if someone in your circle carries negative energy, it will impact you in certain way. But how do we know who we shouldn't hang out with? If someone in your circle drains your energy after you hang out with them, if they're constantly talking about things in negative perspective, if they encourage you to neglect your goals, if you don't feel good about yourself hanging out with them, then consider how much time you spend with them or consider removing them from your circle. TV shows, movies, books, music. When I watch Legally Blonde, it makes me feel so confident. It makes me want to wear pink. It makes me want to be fashionable. It makes me want to make new girlfriends. It makes me want to read hard book. When I first watched Legally Blonde, I was 15, just about the time that I was leaving school and choosing what major that I want to go in college to. And you know what? At that time, because I watched Legally Blonde, I felt like I want to be a lawyer, which is absurd because I'm the least person who can win argument. And I don't like argument. I'm more like a soft, calm person who actually takes time and think about things and actually communicate later on. But because of the movie that I watched, I felt like I want to be a lawyer. What I'm getting at is the things that we are watching can impact us that much. Similarly with music, I listen to music that hypes me up, that makes me feel confident, that connects me with positive emotions. If you're someone who's trying to heal from your breakup, but you listen to songs like I Might Kill My Ex, not the best idea, then it's very less likely that you're gonna heal from that breakup. Words and music carry certain energy, so be aware. Similarly with the books, I read self-development books, the books that actually contributes to my personal growth. But I also read fiction, but what I don't do is I don't just read fiction just because it's popular and it's all over YouTube and TikTok. Because I read this book called It Ends With Us by Colin Hoover because it was so popular and everyone was talking about it. And I was really excited to read this book and I was expecting real good romantic book. But you know what I got? I got abusive relationship book. And people are actually fantasizing that. If you're idolizing that kind of relationship, there is seriously something wrong. Stop putting this kind of thing in your head. Whatever you consume, whatever you expose yourself to more, you start to normalize that and you start to thinking that way. And thoughts are energy and energy is emotion. So this is it, guys. I am so happy you came by. I really appreciate you watching this video and I hope you take something out of this. And please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe because that would help me a lot. And I'll see you on my next video. I love you. Bye. Mwah.